Dan, welcome to the Sports Show. We've got a very interesting panel for you today. A couple of people making their debut on the Sports Show. John Krasinski from the AP does a great job writing sports for all the teams in town. Pete Najarian, and I know this set's probably a little overwhelming to you compared to what you normally work with in New York.
It's beautiful.
Pete, but of course, former Gopher great. You see him on CNBC and the Business Talk. And then Sid Hartman, who's going to turn 96 on Tuesday, right?
Correct.
Yeah. You excited about it?
No.
What?
Let's not talk about that.
Well, it's great to have a different panel assembled and talk about a lot of different sports. Sid, let's start with the Gophers. They lost out in the Big Ten tournament, the basketball team, this past weekend, and it looks a little bleak.
The only good thing about it is I watch them scrimmage once in a while, and they do have two outstanding transfers. One kid has got a chance of playing the NBA someday, and then they got another big guy. And then they got three good recruits, and if the guys come back from last year, if Morris comes back.
Not Morris, Mason.
Huh?
Morris is done. Mason is who you're talking about.
Mason.
Yeah.
If Mason comes back, they'll be a lot better next year. So the big thing is people are all upset about that $7 million buyout.
Yeah.
And the fact he's losing is one factor, but that's got a lot of people upset. Teague, the great Norwood Teague, did it. The president okayed it, and that's nothing they can do about it.
Pete,
but I think they'll be a lot better next year.
Pete, you're an alumni. You also cover sports and you do business, and we talk. This one all ties in together.
Yep.
You got suspended players. You got a program that's not doing real well. I know you know Richard Pitino, and you know sports very well, and you've got this $7 million buyout. Just assess it from where you sit.
Well, it seems to me that you've got to give him the opportunity, and I think the opportunity is next year. And Sid talked about some of the recruits that are there already, the transfers, and all of a sudden you look at what he's done in terms of recruiting the state. He's got 2 of the top 5 players in the state coming in as well. So I think we've just got to see how this plays out for next year. I know that that's a huge contract. It's probably not a contract that I would have said made sense at the time, quite honestly. But I think Richard has what in place now to be a very competitive team. And he better be competitive, because the real key is they got to put fannies in the stands. They have to put people back in that arena. When I went to the university and way back in the day with Sid and everybody else, in the late 70s, 80s, and then a little bit even beyond that, but 17,000 every single night.
Yep.
Now they're at about a fraction of that, which is ridiculous. They have got to get people back in the barn, and the way you do it is winning, but they've got to get an exciting product on the court.
And John, you know, we can talk all we want about a recruiting class and all those things. I would hate to have a commission-based job selling tickets to the Gophers next year. It all sounds good, you know, to have some hope. You got to have hope and all those things, but you've covered this team for a few years. What did you see? Yeah,
I just saw a team that is really reeling from leadership-wise, from talent-wise. I mean, they need that influx of the freshmen that are coming in next year in the worst way, and those 2 transfers as well. I mean, they just don't have enough talent right now.
There's a lot of pressure on those kids, too, coming in, and you're starting to ask a lot of them.
Well, and that's the thing with the Big Ten as well, is there's not a lot of one-and-done guys at Michigan State, at Indiana. They're coming in and playing against real big, grown men in this league, and so that's going to be a real challenge. And I agree with Pete when you talk about the atmosphere at the barn. I mean, when I was a kid, the only tickets we could afford were Penn State tickets, because you had to scalp them outside because you couldn't get in any other time. And right now, it's just dead. And so I think that there's going to be some excitement with Amir Coffey, with some of the homegrown talent that is going to come in here, but they've got to prove. Richard Pitino has to prove that he can coach and X and O some of these really good coaches in the league, and they can win games that way, because that's the way it's going to have to be.
And Mike, I got to tell you, he mentions Penn State was the only ticket he could get. I'm old enough, and you're young enough. Penn State wasn't in the league.
Right.
We didn't have
You couldn't even get it with Penn State.
It was truly the Big Ten. But the reality is, they've got to get those fans back there, and they've got to get that excitement. And the great thing about basketball is the number of players. It doesn't take a lot. And you can be young, because there are a lot of one and dones, not necessarily in the Big Ten, but around the country. You can get it done, and you can turn a program in basketball around far faster than you can in football, and I think that's the opportunity.
One of the problems you got is the terrible preseason schedule they have every year. That was a problem before Patino got here.
It was a bigger problem when they lost to South Dakota and South Dakota State, too.
I think they'll have trouble selling season tickets next year. People are going to wait and see what happens, and that preseason schedule doesn't help them any.
No.
And they can't even beat those teams.
Yeah, now the Big Ten Network has helped them a lot in terms of a cash cow. But, Pete, when you look at the overall culture and you talk about big money and programs and all this stuff, how does that mix to you? How does that jive to you? You know, you've got a hockey team that needs to put more people in the seats.
Right.
You've got a basketball team that needs to put more people in the seats. Football's, you know,
doing pretty well.
Yeah, doing pretty well overall. A lot of pressure on coaches for that to be expected, I guess. But is money a huge factor in how good your program is?
Well, no doubt about it. And I think the money is not necessarily just the TV money. That's going to be great. That's great regardless.
But everybody gets that.
Everybody gets that, so that makes it very equal. But we have got to figure out a way to get Minnesota back embraced with the business community. And that's the thing that excites me the most is we aren't engaged. We can be engaged. We can be a great university again. And the only way you can do that is you've got to get support. When you look at the programs around the country that have turned around their sports franchises, and I'll call them franchises because I believe these are businesses, quite frankly. But you look at Oregon, you look at the blueprint that you've got from Oklahoma State, you look at Baylor, you go through where are we seeing success, and where you see success, if you get the donors, if you get the business community behind you, you can build the facilities that should have been built several years ago that are in the process of being built now. We need to accelerate that build.
It seems like Minnesota is always about, John, you say about 5 years behind.
Always.
It's like, okay, by the time they get a practice facility, it's great. A new stadium, all that stuff is great, but you feel like, well, Ohio State did that 5 years ago, and they're now on to the next project. That's just the way you feel.
Right, and that's just because they are so far down the rung in terms of resources in the Big Ten. If you're talking about competing against Ohio State, I mean, that's a big bull to slay, but I think that they should really look at more Iowa, Wisconsin, the ones right around in this region, and just kind of compete with them, try and climb up the ladder into that middle rung before you shoot for the moon.
And with that in mind, why do you think, we've had this conversation on this show before, Wisconsin, last year they go to the NCAA finals in basketball, which is, you know, an amazing, Final Four the year before that. They lose all these guys to the draft. Bo Ryan comes back, leaves in the middle of the year. This year they're down. They're supposed to be down. Their coach comes back. They move the assistant coach up, and they win, and they compete in the Big Ten. He's the coach of the year. Why do you think Wisconsin can do it? It's the question we get asked all the time.
I think it's facilities personally. I look at what they've done and what they've been able to create, the culture that's there, and you look at the football stadium, you look at the basketball stadium, you look at the hockey stadium, all of that, and you look at all the facilities that they have to offer now. Iowa's building out as well. Nebraska's got them all. Minnesota is behind still. We have got to get those things built.
Sydney.
Here's your big problem. You have one NCAA one division team
in Minnesota.
And they can't win. One of the biggest problems they got, and why they have not taken advantage of it, we have more 500 companies
Fortune 500
than any Big Ten school except Chicago with Northwestern, and they don't take advantage of it. They got a football group who can't do much. They're just working stiffs. But you take guys like Mr. Davis of U.S. Bank, the Target, all these companies would be glad to be a part of that company.
Just save that thought. When we come back, we'll ask about why that hasn't converted. Stay with us in the Sports Show.
The Sports Show is brought to you in part by Cambria, makers of quality quartz surfaces. Ticket King. For the best price on tickets anywhere, try Ticket King. RSM. This is the power of being understood. This is RSM. BMW of Minnetonka. Choose from 60 certified pre-owned BMWs at BMW of Minnetonka. And Bobby and Steve's Auto World. Go to BobbyandStevesAutoWorld.com for huge savings on everything from convenience store items to everything under the hood of your car.
File bankruptcy with no money down. Over 20,000 clients have trusted Hoagland Law Offices. Ask about our $0 down payment plan. Call the offices of Robert Hoagland now for a free consultation at an office near you.
How am I going to afford a car with my bad credit?
You know, CarHop will work around your credit problems to get you approved with a really low down payment.
But what if something breaks down? I definitely can't afford that.
Not to worry. CarHop's 18-month, 18,000-mile warranty is one of the best in the business. And you'll get the peace of mind of a money-back guarantee.
That's actually awesome. So now what?
Our manager, Sarah, will get you started.
CarHop, cars and credit to go. Credit cards and medical bills too much? File bankruptcy with no money down. Over 20,000 clients have trusted Hoagland Law Offices. Call the law offices of Robert Hoagland for a free consultation at an office near you.
An odometer under 15,000 miles and an up to 5-year, 75,000-mile warranty makes it elite. The way it does this makes it a BMW. Introducing BMW Certified Pre-Owned Elite.
Choose from 60 certified pre-owned BMWs at BMW of Minnetonka.
Looking for a nice, big, juicy rack of ribs?
Fabulous chops, huge steaks, and the Buddy Bowl? Then J.D. Hoyt's is the place for you. Hoyt's opened in 1983, and Mike Andrews and his partner John White have kept this Minnesota tradition at the top of the food chain. Managing owner Pat Montague gives us a tour.
At J.D. Hoyt's, enjoy a relaxed atmosphere, great food, friendly service, private dining room, second-to-none happy hour, just blocks from the new ballpark.
Located at 394 in North Washington. Locally owned, nationally known. Hoyt's.
Stop on by, check out their crab. That's right, I said it at J.D. Hoyt's. They've got it all going on right now. On your way to downtown Minneapolis, J.D. Hoyt's Supper Club, you bet. Welcome back to the Sports Show. John Krasinski, Pete Najarian, and Sid Hartman. Okay, so we're saying that there's this untapped gold mine out there that they can't get to. Lou Holtz got to it. You played for him, Pete.
I did.
How did he get to it?
Lou Holtz got to it. I got to give Harvey McKay some credit.
And this doesn't happen often, so go ahead.
He helped him out. I helped him out. I went with Holtz to maybe 25 different places, and they had never been approached. And here's what happens. I walk in his office one day, and here's a letter from the foundation. You can't go here. You can't go here.
You mean the University of Minnesota Foundation, they didn't want him calling on the same people.
They didn't want them to go there because they had failed to get him, and they was afraid he'd get him.
Jerry Kill was able to make some inroads, obviously. Pete, what do you see? Obviously, you played for Lou Holtz.
Yeah.
What was the magic bullet? Because he showed us that there was money out there laying around that people would be.
He convinced people that there was excitement and there was an ability for Minnesota to win. And we were talking off camera, but we can win here. We've got talent at every single sport. When you think about basketball, unfortunately, some of those guys leave, but there's basketball talent, there's football talent. We got kids playing at Alabama and Arkansas right now that should have been staying at the University of Minnesota. They're going to Notre Dame.
Offensive
They're
line,
going to,
and
it angers me to no end. But I think what the problem is we've got to coach. First of all, we've got to recruit them properly. But second of all, when you look at the business climate, that's what Lou was able to do. He was able to get into the business world. And when you look at, Sid mentioned it, but there's 19 Fortune 500 companies within a very close proximity of the university campus. We got to get in front of those guys and get them to be contributors. If they get involved and re-engaged, then we win.
Do you think that they're not calling on the right people, or do you think people aren't taking their call right now?
I think that they would take the call, but I think that there's also a frustration because the university's pushed back. And I think somehow we've got to put that hand out there. If I was part of that university, if I was part of that athletic program, I would go right after each and every one of these. You go through 3M, US Bank, TCF, Medtronic, Target. You go through the long list.
The Hayes Group.
That's just the beginning. And then you've got the Carlson family out there that's still out there. Carlson School of Business is great. But that is a huge family that's got a lot of wealth. And you look at the Anderson. Across the board, we have more access than anybody, and we haven't taken advantage of it.
Let me say this. Chip Scroggins wrote a column the other day. Would you take that job?
I would.
See, that's the
But
thing.
people say I'm crazy, Sid, but yes, I would.
Rather than bring some guy in from Colorado, or they should bring in a local guy who knows the market, who knows everybody, who don't have to start from scratch.
See, I told you, John, about how he was changing.
There it is.
Now, I got a question for you, John, because you covered the Big Ten. Why then, not that they're on the top of the charts, but why do you think Northwestern has been successful in the last couple of years in their money sports?
Pat Fitzgerald, right? I mean, you have to hire the right coaches and the right athletic directors to get in place to put a good plan in place and then to execute it. And I think that's what happened with Wisconsin those many years ago. Barry Alvarez came in, turned it around, then they got Bo Ryan. And Bo wasn't this highly sought-after guy,
Neither one
right?
of them were. I mean, one was an assistant coach, one was at Wisconsin, Milwaukee.
Yeah, what they did, what the Wisconsin leadership did, was identify the right candidates and put them in place and then let them do their work. And so I think that's what has to happen, and that's what shows you can do it here if you find the right coaches.
But Pete Richter was a key part of that,
He
too.
was the key.
And he came from the business climate with a background at Wisconsin.
Right.
You studied him. What did he do?
Well, I think we have to understand that essentially an athletic director now, in my opinion, is the CEO. And when you're talking about a CEO, you're talking about a $100 million program or more when you're talking about the top 25.
Yeah.
Minnesota's one of them. So it has to be treated like a business because it truly is a business. It doesn't mean sports isn't fun. It doesn't mean it's not part of the university the way it should be. It just means that you have to treat it like a business. And I think that's the way Minnesota has to treat this thing.
I'll give you two examples. Northwestern hires a coach, he dies. They elevate the assistant coach.
But now they were doing okay with Walker, too.
And he got lucky. The other thing is, I've told this story before. I'm down at Colorado with
You're not going to tell the Alvarez story again, are you?
Yeah, but I want to tell the story.
Well, I know, but you told it last week.
Barry Alvarez.
Okay, go ahead.
I told Barry Alvarez not to take the job. They were terrible.
Right.
And he was terrible for the first 3 years. And then he got things going.
Yeah, and that's the greatest example, right? Is to sit and watch that blueprint, or to watch how long Ferentz has done it. They dip once in a while, but they don't dip for long, do they?
Stability. Stability. Just stick with your plan and have confidence in it that it's going to work out.
Take a break, come back, stay with us.
The Sports Show is brought to you in part by Escape MSP, the fastest 60 minutes of your life.
Same time next week.
When it drives and looks like new, you'll want to treat it like new. Certified pre-owned by BMW.
Choose from 60 certified pre-owned BMWs at BMW of Minnetonka.
You are watching CW-23.
Iowa.
Welcome back to the Sports Show. Just one more note on the Go Over story. You were just talking during the break about the faculty. And there's always been talk about the faculty and the athletics at the University of Minnesota not necessarily being in harmony. Is that important or not?
Very important. And they don't have a faculty that is really pushable. They had one athletic
pushable, you say.
McKinley Boston, when he was here, he had a thing going. And then they got in trouble, and Kill has got it going right now. We'll see if this new coach can do the same thing. You need that faculty to be in fair football.
Or at least not against, huh, Pete?
Right, they can't be against it. And I think the real key is the faculty has to understand that with winning programs comes more kids who want to go to school there from around the country. And I don't know if everybody always fully understands how to really embrace that whole idea. When Alabama started, because they were down, and then when Nick Saban came in and took over for a lot of losing years at Alabama, suddenly people start to want to go to school at Alabama. They want to go to school at the Clemsons of the world, and all of a sudden you can do the things that the faculty wants to do. They can raise the prices, but also the standards start to raise as well. Everything that they want to have happen from the faculty standpoint can start with the athletic program.
And you follow the social media, and you just see how proud these people, they're just going to school. They're not the ones that are winning.
Yeah.
Let's move to the NCAA basketball, because obviously the tournament comes out. John, I don't know, Sid and I were talking about it earlier on the radio today. Maybe it's because the Gophers have been such a non-factor. Has college basketball lost some of its fervor just in general? Because it used to feel to me like this was, now you've got people that invest in brackets, but I don't know that anybody is following the teams as close as they used to, or do you think that's just because we live in Minnesota and we haven't any reason to?
Well, I think we are insulated, I think, in Minnesota from big-time college basketball because it hasn't been around here for a while now. But I also think that this year in particular, it's so wide open. There's not the number one team that you're following that everyone's getting behind,
Kentucky,
and saying Kentucky or anything like that. There's a lot of number one teams that have just lost and are up and down, and so I think it's harder to kind of really grasp when you don't have that star-studded team to look at and to really follow.
Because that draws you in.
That draws the casual fan in. Yes, and right now in Minnesota we're casual fans because they're not engaged with the Gophers because they just haven't been a factor for so long.
Pete, the NCAA tournament, how does it register with you?
I think it's exciting, but we are out of it right now. I mean, obviously, Minnesota, we're casual. We're casually watching this thing, but I think if there's one thing, when you're a Minnesota person, you start looking at the Big Ten, and then you start looking at the tournament. And you have to be excited about the fact of how well Purdue's playing, how well Michigan State's playing. I mean, we have some great teams in the Big Ten, and it's a lot of fun to watch. They've got some unbelievable talent. And you guys mentioned it earlier, but I think it's very important. It's not a lot of one-and-dones. These guys are actually staying there for their senior years. That's pretty exciting and kind of draws you in, I think, as well.
Here's one problem you have right now. The schools like North Carolina, Duke, schools like that, they get the kids who go to Kentucky, they go to school for 1 year, and then they turn pro. So they're not going to go to Minnesota because Minnesota's not going to win. And if you're on a losing team, you're basically not going to maybe play great basketball. So it's very difficult to compete with those schools.
Well, you could argue, too, though, Sid, that I think that Minnesota might be in a better position there if they're not getting one-and-dones. They get guys that are going to stay in school
Yes, and
for
you're the
3 or
only
4
university
years.
here, and you got, we watched Amir Coffee last night, and, there's a lot of good things there.
And so then every 3 or 4 years, when you get that senior class that has come up together and stayed together, then you're more like almost a mid-major, and then you can make those runs a little deeper into the tournament. You don't have to recycle your talent every 1 or 2 years.
The last thing I'd love to say about that, too, is if you're great, they'll find you. If you're a football player, you can be at North Dakota State.
Especially
you
now,
can be
right?
anywhere,
yeah,
right?
we have the number one quarterbacks in North Dakota State.
So if you're a basketball player and you've got a kid right out the suburb not too far from here who might be a lottery pick, they say, someday, why not come to Minnesota? Why wouldn't he come to Minnesota, even if he's one and done? Why not come to Minnesota and be a part of it? They'll know where he is.
Quickly, how do you fill your brackets out? Based on coaches or what?
Blind luck.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I do. I look at coaches and I look at senior guards because guard play is so important in the tournament. And I think if you have guys that aren't going to get rattled in those big spots that can control the flow of the game, that's what I like.
John,
how do you fill it out?
Here's your problem.
Well, here's another problem. We found another problem in this segment. Give it to us quick.
They aren't going to get a good coach to come here. They took Patino because there was nobody else.
Norwood took him. Norwood didn't know what he was doing.
Huh?
Norwood didn't know what he was doing. He fired a coach before he had any idea who was out there.
Can't do that.
He couldn't get anybody.
Right, but he fired a coach before he even knew what he could get.
If you have the right athletic director in place, I think you can get the right coach.
They can't get the right coach.
Oh, yeah. I'm positive they can.
Okay, take a break, come back.
If you guys could go on a free shopping spree anywhere, where would you go? I'd go to the grocery store. Pizza, ice cream. I'd go shop for clothes. You know where I go? I'd go to Ticket King. Ticket King! At Ticket King, you can buy great seats for the Vikings, the Wild, the Timberwolves, and of course the Twins. We love the details, go to ticketkingonline.com. Any ticket, anytime, anywhere. It's the real thing. It's Ticket King. Right, Dad?
Couldn't have said it any better myself.
That's for sure.
Take every step without hesitation. Anticipate your next move with certainty. Because our trusted advisors help you prepare for challenges specific to your business. Our focus is always on you, so your focus is always forward. Experience the power of being understood. RSM, Audit, Tax, and Consulting for the Middle Market.
You're watching CW-23.
Final segment, let's just move down and cover a couple of quick ones. Vikings made some moves, some off-season moves the other day. Pete, give us a quick NFL.
I love it. I love what they're doing. They're going for the right spot. They're putting money in the right place where you don't have as much failure, I don't think, and that's offensive line. It goes back to the days of Steve Hutchinson. Alex Boone was an incredible sign, and if they continue to bolster up that offensive line, Teddy will have a great year.
Timberwolves. What a game the other night, John. In a season, you cover them more than any other team. You cover the Timberwolves. And out of the blue, they played this great game against Oklahoma State. And again, you go, hey, man, we've got something here.
They have a lot of talent, and I thought Ricky Rubio was really telling after the game. He hits the big three-pointer for them to win, and he says, basically, this is a great feeling, but there should have been more of these. And you can tell that the players know that there's talent there, and it's just young talent. It's going to take a little time to grow up. But you look at Towns, he is an elite player. And
and wants the ball at the end of the game.
And so you can build around that, and if you get Rubio shooting a little better, you have Wiggins. They have a really nice core that in a year or two is going to be pretty darn good.
And finally, you say, why didn't you have a birthday cake? We had one, and the candles collapsed this thing, so we had to rebuild it. Sid Hartman, look into the camera there. Sid, what do you want to end with today? You're the birthday boy. It's your show.
I think it's very difficult to get coaches to come to Minnesota because they have not won a football championship since 1967. They haven't won a basketball championship since 1982, although Haskins had that one problem.
Yeah.
But I think it's very difficult to get a top coach here.
Okay, there you go. Happy birthday, buddy.
Thank you.
Yep. John, Pete, thank you so much for coming in.
Mike.
We appreciate it very much. And Sid Hartman, 96 on Tuesday. You talked about an institution. Thank you for watching us. Back next week, same time, same place, The Sports Show on the CW.
The Sports Show is brought to you in part by Cambria, makers of quality quartz surfaces. Ticket King. For the best price on tickets anywhere, try Ticket King. Escape MSP, the fastest 60 minutes of your life. RSM, this is the power of being understood. This is RSM. BMW of Minnetonka. Choose from 60 certified pre-owned BMWs at BMW of Minnetonka. And Bobby and Steve's Auto World. Go to BobbyandStevesAutoWorld.com for huge savings on everything from convenience store items to everything under the hood of your car.